all have mixed feelings. We are all traumatized. We are all saddened because this is a sign of Iman. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in an authentic hadith that Iman, the Muslims, in their compassion for each other, the affection for each other, like a limb. If one body part is hard, the whole body is hard. That's why we are all hard, we are all sad, we are all devastated because of the ongoing massacre that is going on against our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Palestine. We have all...
Okay. I've been watching this situation unfold and the backlash unfold over Gaza, and the media coverage especially unfold with a keen interest. As many people know, there are widespread protests. Nothing super huge yet. This one in D.C. numbered in the tens of thousands. This one in Britain, excuse this. What is this? Not for sale. Shut up, Guardian. Guardian is not for sale. Am I retarded? Okay, so this one here. Now, I've heard that there are hundreds of thousands of people gathering in Trafalgar Square and the vicinity in London, over mostly pro-Palestinians. So that's what I'm hearing. This, I think, what does this one say here? Protesters chanted. Of course they chanted. Doesn't say, but I think another article somewhere here said thousands. Where does it say? The thousands rally. So I don't know if the Guardian is trying to downplay this. What was this? One day ago, I heard there were hundreds of thousands, or 100,000 at least. So that's pretty significant. So there's significant protesting going on in England. There is some protesting going on in the United States. Now, let me preface what's going on in England with the fact that in the lead up to the Iraq War, as the British government was mulling the idea of entering into the war in the coalition of the willing of 2 or 3 countries, which was the United States, Britain, and I think South Korea sent 10 troops or something. But, as the British government was mulling this idea, there was a protest in London that had over 1 million people. Over 1 million people. And Great Britain still entered into the war. Basically ignored it and entered into the war. And I'm not going to sit here and say, first of all, I would never be one to discourage anyone from engaging in an anti-war protest. Never would I do that. I would say still, regardless of what you think the circumstances or the possible outcomes of the protest are, if you believe in this issue and you want to voice your opinion, your right to assemble is one of the most important rights, first of all. It's a good way to get engaged. And it always makes a difference to some extent. Whether it's going to change people's minds in the halls of power is another issue entirely. That has to do with the underlying circumstances surrounding the event. It has to do with whether there's an election coming up or not. I think in this case, with these protests, they could be a bit more effective, a bit more consequential, because you have in the United States elections coming up and in Great Britain coming up. So they're going to be at least a drop or two in the bucket. But that's not, that what interests me here is how the media has covered the situation in Gaza versus the situation in Ukraine. So if we go to Google News, which is really, if you want to see what propaganda is trying to be pushed out, what kind of propaganda they're trying to push on you, the first place to go is Google News. You just search news, you just search a topic. Let's put Gaza on here. I think I looked it up somewhere else. But so if we look up Gaza and we go to news, Israel-Hamas war rages as outcry grows over Gaza crisis. Who cares about William Burns? Tens of thousands. Ambulance targeted. Gaza evacuation suspended after ambulance targeted. That was a bombing of an ambulance. The Israelis bombed an ambulance. Israel strikes ambulance at Al-Shifa Hospital. Okay, so let's look at this. We have the Washington Post reporting that Israel strikes an ambulance in Gaza. That's a shitty thing to do, right? Now, if we go over here, I put in a search for Ukrainians shell Donetsk. Now, it is undisputable, indisputable, provably true. There is no possible dispute. We know for a fact that the Ukrainian military has been shelling civilians in the city of Donetsk for years. But this has been the case throughout the war. Now, if we put Ukrainians shell Donetsk in the search here, what do we get? No, they're saying, oh, the Ukraine artillery crew, they're the victims. I like that one. Ukraine says Russia attacks easing around Avdiivka. Russian officials say Ukraine hit Donetsk University with cluster shells. Russian officials say. Let's go back over here. Israel strikes ambulance. So that's a more definite statement, saying that we are reporting that Israel struck an ambulance with a bomb. Probably an airstrike. Could be an artillery. Here they're saying Russian officials say Ukraine hit Donetsk University. Child killed, 2 injured by shelling in Donetsk. They don't say that the Ukrainians did it. Here they're going with Russia strikes Ukraine, kills 4. So what you see the difference in the coverage right here. And I can go on and on about this. I tried to look up, when the Ukrainians got caught shooting Russian soldiers in the kneecap. There was nothing but propaganda. You go on Google News, you won't see anything about that. If you look up the Bucha incident, the Bucha incident has been debunked. Okay. The Bucha incident was that incident where they had a bunch of civilians dead in the street. Okay. And they said the Russians did it. No investigation was ever done. No independent investigation. The Russians called for one. The Russians wanted an independent investigation by the UN of the Bucha incident. None was done. And we have lots of evidence pointing to the fact that the Ukrainians did it. Now, if you go to Bucha, if you write in Bucha here, we have evidence that the Ukrainians shelled Bucha after the Russians left and killed civilians. We have evidence of Ukrainians admitting that they were going to go in and kill collaborators. We have satellite videos showing the actual mortar shell. We have the remnants of the mortar still there with the dead Ukrainian bodies in front of it in the blast zone laying there. We have so much evidence that the Ukrainians were the ones that killed those people that we saw on that video when they were driving down the street and you saw a dead person here, a dead person there. I made a video about that at the time, and my video, I was suspicious at the time. If you look up any, if you Google News, any Ukrainian war crime, you will be hard to find confirmation of any Ukrainian war crime. But we know that Ukrainians have been committing lots of war crimes. The most ridiculous situation was when the Ukrainians were shelling the nuclear power plant at Zaporozhye, and the media would not admit that the Ukrainians were doing it. They were saying, at first they were saying the Russians are shelling their own nuclear power plant. Let's see if we can find that real quick. Let's see. Shelling. Okay. I don't even know what this is about. Ukraine restores power to Russia. Who knows what this is about? Russian shelling prompts fiery UN response. What we know. No one is admitting here. Here they're trying to say that the Russians were firing on their own nuclear power plant. Let me pause it for a second, see if I can find confirmation that it was the Ukrainians. So here we have a PBS, article, and the UN people who, it's not hard to figure out where artillery shells are coming from. It's not difficult. Okay. Whoever is behind this, it must stop immediately. You had for months and months and months Ukraine shelling the nuclear power plant, probably at the behest of the United States. And the media would not say the Ukrainians were doing it. And it was just this absolutely ridiculous situation, right? Okay, so I think I've made my point about the coverage of the Ukraine-Russia war and how, if the media had any credibility at that point to anybody, they were, following that war, it should have lost all credibility in their eyes. Here we have the Ukraine, Al Jazeera. Of course, they're going to, tell more of the truth about this. Israeli warplanes strike Gaza refugee camp. So here we have the media saying, period, point blank, the Israeli army struck the refugee camp. So we see the difference in the coverage here. And I noticed this early on. And I was wondering, well, what's really going on here? Because I would have expected, at this point, I figured, well, the media is completely controlled. At least the mainstream media. They're completely controlled. They're going to do what the people in the halls of power want them to do. They're going to say what they want them to say. So what is behind this? What is behind this? Because obviously the United States deep state wants to keep Israel, the colonial possession, the protectorate of Israel, under its wing, and they want to stick up for Israel. Okay, so what's going on? Now, the first thing that's going on is it is a fact that there is a pretty deep pro-Palestinian element within the mainstream left. Okay, so if we look at attitudes towards the Israel-Palestine situation versus the Russia-Ukraine situation, the mainstream left went bonkers during Russiagate, and they're still trying to confirm that. So they're still salty about the fact that they never got their smoking gun over the ridiculous conspiracy theory that Putin was puppeteering Trump. So they're still salty. They hate Putin. They hate Putin because they still, even though all of it's been debunked, they still hate Putin because they see Putin as responsible for Trump winning, even though there's absolutely no evidence. Putin doesn't care who wins the presidential election at this point. And even back then, he was saying, it doesn't matter who wins the election because the president doesn't really control foreign policy. He said that. So the mainstream left is still hysterical about Putin. But there's this deep-seated pro-Palestinian movement within the mainstream left. And it goes to the Arab Americans, who are basically a bunch of shit libs, and they vote for Democrats because they think the Democrats are going to do things favorable for them, right? So they're going to put up with the LGBT stuff, and they're going to put up with the anti-religious stuff because they think they're going to get some benefit out of it. But they will not support the Democrats if the Democrats don't play this situation properly. So they're worried about that. But then there's also within academia and within even the media a significant portion of people who are pro-Palestine. So there's that. So there is that element, and that is why we have seen, in the very beginning, we could see that the media was not really reporting on anything Israel was doing. They spread all of the propaganda about babies being decapitated. That's been debunked. So we saw that. But now what we're seeing is they're starting to report in definite language saying that the Israelis are striking they struck a refugee camp. Okay, we saw a couple weeks ago, and I was really surprised when a couple news outlets, The Guardian being one, The New York Times being another, actually report that it looked like Israel had struck that hospital parking lot. Okay, so now we see the difference. And part of it has to do with this pro-Palestinian camp within the mainstream left. Okay, we got that. But there's more to it than that, I think. And what I'm getting at here is people think that, they're going out there and fighting the power. They're going to take their pictures, put them on Instagram. Look at me. I'm standing up against the government. I didn't see them around during lockdowns, protests. I didn't see them, they've been pretty silent on, Russia, Ukraine. But now they're out here, they're saying, oh, look at me. All right. And I'm fighting the power. And the media is here rebuilding their credibility. And that's the black pill. We don't want that. We don't want the media to rebuild their credibility. But they're rebuilding their credibility here. And that's a big issue, in my opinion. But make no mistake. These 10,000 or so people in D.C. wouldn't have had a really good time if they were not wanted there. First of all, there would have been provocations that the cops could have provoked it. It's only 10,000 people, let alone if they got some real glowy type people in there. They're only there because someone wants them to be there, is what I'm trying to say. Or several different people want them to be there. And I'm trying to put this together. What is really going on here? Why is the media being allowed to speak so freely about Palestine and what's going on in Gaza? Why is that? I'm not sure yet. I can speculate, but I'm not going to do that yet. But earlier today, Samira Khan, who knows her shit, she definitely knows her shit. Let's close some of these windows. Maybe this will. So Samira Khan, who knows her shit, she retweeted this. She said earlier, I was listening to one of her spaces, and she knows her shit. And she's a good contrarian, but not as fucking goofy as like Michael Tracy. But she's got that contrarian type of vibe going, and she's really good. And she said that she feels that these protests are astroturfed, and I said I agree these protests are astroturfed because if part of the media hadn't been reporting on Israeli crimes as they ignored Ukraine corruption and crimes, there wouldn't be any protests in the first place. So they're astroturfed, and there's lots of virtue signaling. So that is my take on this. Is there's this protest movement. The kids are going out there pretending that they're doing something good. And it's good that they're out there. Don't get me wrong. But there's something deeper going on here. Maybe, for one, I know that Mossad was kind of like not very happy with Netanyahu. They were protesting against Netanyahu over the judicial reforms for the last year. So we know that. So there's probably elements within the deep state. And now they're starting to talk about it openly. They're saying that Netanyahu has to go. You're starting to see actual articles. Let's see if I could find anything quickly. Yeah, see, we're starting to see in Politico, which if one thing about Politico is one of those magazines, which is just a straight up mouthpiece. You got some of the reporters there, and what they do is they do press releases. Essentially, they say they try to make it look like they're reporting on something, but what's happening is people within the administration are calling them, or people within the intelligence agencies are calling them and saying, "Hey, put this out there." Okay, so here we have. 4 days ago now, Politico saying Netanyahu may not last. So there's elements within the deep state that want Netanyahu gone. I just think personally they may have bit off more than they can chew with this one, because Netanyahu is a sly devil. He's corrupt. He's obviously a sociopath, but he is a competent politician. He is a slippery guy, and I think the Biden administration may get worked by Netanyahu. But it seems to me like elements in the deep state want to get rid of Netanyahu. And otherwise, if the deep state was in full support of Netanyahu, there would be very little reporting on Israeli strikes of ambulances, of hospitals, or whatever. And thus, there wouldn't be as many protests. See, people think that they're going against the grain, but they're actually doing exactly what some people want them to do. Now, this is not a global cabal. This is not a conspiracy. I can't stand that. But there are elements within the halls of power, okay? Within the halls of power, you have a lot of narcissists, right? Some of them agree sometimes with each other, but they don't always agree. And right now we're seeing a fight, and it looks like the people that want to get Netanyahu are winning this fight, and they're using their assets in the media. And this isn't necessarily just government actors. This can also be private actors that are involved in this. As a matter of fact, I would say most of the influence might be coming from private actors using their proxies within the deep state and the media to get this stuff out there. So in addition to there being an organic pro-Palestinian movement within the mainstream left, which has always been the case, but if the deep state was unified behind Netanyahu, they would be shut up real quick. And so they're not. So we're seeing a fracturing going on here. And, it's great that people are out protesting, but let's not kid ourselves. You've been manipulated, okay? You've been manipulated, and I'll take it. I'll take it that people are out there protesting because the media decided this time to accurately report war crimes being perpetrated by Israel. That wasn't the case in many other past conflicts that Israel was involved in, but now it is. I think it has something to do with Netanyahu being a pariah in some people's eyes. So that is going to be my video. I'll keep it, what are we at? 24 minutes, fine. All right, I am out.